Today I want to talk to you about something that I am super passionate about, and it is something that I've released pretty recently called the Scale Scorecard. To give you a bit of background, I spent years in a corporate group CEO role, been scaling the ladder, blah, blah, blah. You guys have probably already heard this. So I'm not going to belabor the point. Go back in time or look at my LinkedIn profile if you want more detail. But ultimately, my job was to find and buy businesses in the 1 to 30 million range and then scale them up as part of a group. And I looked at hundreds of companies. And in all that time, I found there was one thing to be consistent and true, was the founders are just awesome. They're the hustle and the sacrifice, and they pour everything into their business. But despite a lot of that, founders that were in front of me trying to sell their business to me were missing out on either getting a sale at all or getting the valuation they really wanted to at the exit. And why? It wasn't because the businesses weren't good. It's because they were missing a whole bunch of foundational things that directly impacted on how scalable, how sellable, and how much value there was in the business. And it got me thinking, like, where are founders supposed to learn this stuff? It's not like it comes in a manual. It doesn't seem to be tied up in a single course. And so anyway, when I left that job, I decided I really wanted to help founders like that. I enjoyed working with them, loved the characters, loved the grit, loved the vision they had. And honestly, helping people succeed makes me feel good. It's why I get out of bed. It's why I got into leadership. It's why I love business, why I love serving clients. It's awesome. Selfish, really, but I really enjoy it. And so what I've done is I have reverse engineered what I'd seen as kind of 35 really key things that if founders had done them at the time, 3 years prior to seeing me as an investor, their businesses would have been more sellable, more scalable, and more valuable. And so I've turned it into a 35-question diagnostic tool designed for founders to self-evaluate their gaps so they can prioritize what they work on if they really want to scale up, like take on investment and scale up, or step back and install management, or set up for a future exit.
Welcome to the Scale HQ podcast. I am Sean Steele, and I'm a growth mentor, digital nomad, a massive metalhead, and the founder of Scale HQ. And you, more importantly, are a founder of a 7 or 8 figure services business who is finally ready to get serious about scaling up or securing a step back from your business or a life-changing exit in the next 3 to 5 years. And if that's you, then you are in the right place, because with over 100 million in revenue growth across my last 4 companies and many acquisitions under my belt, I have spent my whole career figuring out what makes businesses more valuable, scalable, and sellable. And I've learned a couple of things, and I'm thrilled to have an opportunity to share those with you today. So welcome to your fortnightly dose of practical strategy, founder success stories, and expert deep dives to help you finally get a return on all that sacrifice that you've made in your business. Welcome to the show. Let's dive right in.
So let me explain what this is. It's kind of like, it's a health check, basically, but it covers 7 key areas that I think are really important when you're thinking about scalability and sellability. And first is strategy, then execution, then leadership, then team, then financials, then the offer, the sort of core offer of the business, then sales, and then support, the support around the founder. So let me give you a quick example of like some of these questions. So I ask questions in this diagnostic like, for strategy, do you have a clear and meaningful purpose? Do you have clear medium-term measures of success, like 3 to 5 years? Do you know what success actually looks like? Do you have a strategy that can be boiled down to a couple of key initiatives that will actually create competitive advantage over that time frame? And do you have an integrated strategy and execution plan that ensures that those big strategic things that you want to do that are usually medium-term and important but not urgent actually get airtime, actually feed into people's priorities, actually feed into the rhythm of planning and reporting and visibility in the business? Those are some of the sort of strategy questions. And then on the execution side, do you have the right KPIs that allow you to make quality kind of evidence-driven decision-making? Do you have systems with a kind of almost checklist-supported processes that are actually going to scale to 3 times your current size? Do you have a thoughtfully designed customer journey that exceeds customer expectations on a predictable basis, as opposed to it just being a bit random and just relying on the goodwill or the energy or the intelligence of your team all the time? Those are just a few examples, but these are there's 35 questions like that. Obviously, I've given you slightly longer versions, but that's the general vibe. And what they do is they help you understand where your strengths are and where you might be gaps that could be holding you back from scaling, selling, or stepping back from day-to-day operations at some point. To bring this to life, no better way of doing this than with a story. And I have been asked by the community to tell more stories and do shorter podcasts. So that is what I'm attempting to do today and going forward. So to bring this to life, let me tell you of a founder who recently completed the Growth Scorecard and did a growth audit, which I'll explain in a minute. Let's call him Sam. His name's not Sam, but let's call him Sam. Business is doing about 14 million in revenue. This is obviously a real person. I'm just changing his. Generating 14 million in revenue, has a goal to grow that to about 20 million in the next 3 years. Long-term vision is to step back from the daily grind, focused on more high-level strategy, not really interested in a sale, just wants to be able to step out of operations and do the more strategic stuff. When I reviewed his scorecard, I saw some interesting things, and I'm going to give you the breakdown of his scores first. So he scored 67% in strategy, meaning he probably had almost 3 out of 4 questions that he could say, yes, I do have these things in place. So 67% on strategy, 17% on execution, 60% on leadership, 40% on team, 75% on financials, 50% on the offer, 0% on sales, and 0% on the support. So right off the bat, that tells us that Sam's got, he's got some good things happening in the financials in terms of his understanding and his running of the business. He's got some pretty weak execution going on in terms of how rhythmic the business is. That tells me immediately it's going to be a bit chaotic and a bit random and a bit sort of hard to manage. But he's got a pretty strong strategy, he feels. And there's no sales structure. There's no predictable sales generation machine. And from a support perspective, he's probably running pretty solo because he doesn't have a strong peer group. He doesn't have any mentors or advisory boards or anything like that around him to help him make good decisions. So just at a super high level. But what we did was I offer everybody who does a scorecard, at the moment anyway, a free 45-minute growth audit with me personally. And in the growth audit, so, not everyone who does a scorecard needs to do the growth audit, but if you want to, I've made it available for the moment. I may not do that forever, but right now I'm offering that to people. In the growth audit, we discovered something important though. Sam, even though he'd said he had 75% on the financials, you're thinking, geez, this guy's nailing his financials. He's probably got great, cash flow models and forecasts and insights and data and all the rest. Yeah, but he was also spending a significant amount of his own time on those financial tasks, which was holding him back from focusing on growth. And so he needed to elevate his governance and his financial oversight to free himself up so that he can actually take the business to the next level. And that's why context is so critical. And it's why the growth audit adds a layer of insight that the scorecard alone can't capture. Like, it's a good starting point to help you evaluate the gaps and the strengths, but the context really matters. The aha moment with Sam was where he realized actually he could probably free up almost 50% of his time by delegating financial oversight to somebody else with somebody who was quality. I think he'd outgrown his accountant, and he really probably needed like a virtual CFO to do the things that he was doing, so that he could spend more time on the biggest picture stuff. So we're in the growth audit. He's sharing more about his situation, and the business, it's not struggling. The business is profitable and it's on track to hit his growth targets, but it's becoming more chaotic as it grows. And he's on the verge of burnout. He's involved in every aspect of the business. He's working absolutely insane hours, frustrated by the lack of structure, frustrated by the level of leadership in the business. So started not really grinding to a halt, but the one person that's suffering the most, him. And one of the critical areas that stood out was his CRM, not just a CRM, but like a full business system that he was in the process of developing to automate workflows across the business. Absolutely bang on, needed to do it, no question. But it would decide everything from like who's receiving credit terms to managing the order fulfillment, not just the sales side. And that will obviously help him massively improve the predictability of success across the board in the team. But it doesn't deal with everything. So as we dug deeper, part of the promise of the growth audit is I will have a look at I will discuss with you your scorecard results for your specific business and discuss your situation. I will give you my best perspective within the time that we've got on what I would do in the next 12 months and the next 90 days to tackle what those gaps look like in what order. So some of the key priorities that came out of that was he really needed to start to establish a more foundational leadership structure. He had a whole bunch of really good, well-meaning generalists in his business, but very little leadership and very little clarity. So here's what we landed on. Financial leadership, number one priority for him, because it would free up the most time for him. It probably wouldn't dazzle him with actually all that much that's new, but certainly would get him out of some really delegatable tasks. The second was marketing leadership. Sam is still, writing the brochures, writing the website, even though the business is already at 14 million. He really needs to be able to get out of that space, bring in probably a part-time marketing leader, like a fractional chief marketing officer, something like that, who can, rather than coming in, not necessarily like a part-time marketing manager who's a bit junior, like more like an experienced exec who can come in on a very, maybe like 1 day a month or 2 days a month maximum, to guide, to review and plan and review performance with his internal team and guide that internal team so that he actually develops a systematic and measurable lead generation strategy. And then the third thing was his team needs structure and clarity. Like, they're capable, but they don't have defined roles. They don't have defined accountability. They are constantly shifting between tasks. They're crossing over with each other. So we talked about implementing high performance frameworks that help teams to get organized. So that's everything from kind of organizational design, success profiles, performance metrics. It's quite a journey, but ultimately we need to get the foundations that align his team with the business strategy and that improve engagement and accountability and productivity in the team, which is, a lot of pieces in that, but a really key priority for him if he wants to get away from 14 million and get to 30 million or 50 million or even 20 million in the next 5 years without killing himself. So, I mean, as in, just falling over exhausted. That's what I mean there. So CRM work was going to be crucial to allow him to step back, no question. But we then said, okay, well, if those are the 90-day key priorities, like the marketing, the financial support, and the high-performance team frameworks, then what should he do in the next 90 days? And we said, okay, next 90 days, we need to start the search for a virtual CFO. Like that should be your number one priority, given how much of your time it's going to free up. Second, we need to free up all the time you're spending on websites and brochures and all the rest, because actually you're not the best person who can be doing that. So a fractional CMO type role to guide his internal team and develop their capability was priority 2. And then the third one was to finish the CRM work and then start the process. You're never going to finish this in 90 days, absolutely no way. But to start to set up the clear roles, the success profiles, and the performance metrics as a starting point for his team. So these weren't about, overhauling his entire business. That's the business ain't broken. The business is going very well, but it's becoming chaotic and it's becoming riskier as it gets bigger and more problematic, just putting out fires all the time. This is about taking the first steps and gradually strengthening the foundation so he can make the business more scalable, but in a methodical and sustainable way. And Sam's situation is like, I see this stuff often. The business is profitable and it's growing, but without the right foundations, what starts to happen is you start to hit a ceiling or the founder starts falling over and becomes a massive bottleneck. So you have to start tackling foundational areas like like leadership and high performance team frameworks, and so to make sure the founder doesn't burn out. Because if the founder starts to burn out, they're going to start sabotaging the business because they can't cope with the growth. So the growth audit basically gave him a clear, actionable plan. So instead of having to guess on what he works on next, he had a roadmap for going, okay, these are really big priorities for me. Now I know how to sort of concentrate my efforts. And that's what happens when you get to explore your scorecard in depth. So the good news is, as I said before, I'm currently offering these growth audits for free, but I can't guarantee that I'm going to keep doing that long term. I'm quite sure that I won't. So if you'd like to get a personalized review of your scorecard and discuss your unique sort of path forward, now's the time to do it. You can jump over to www. I don't know why we need to say that anymore. Let's just call it scalescorecard.com.au. Just go to scalescorecard.com.au, complete the scorecard. Let's see where you land. You can opt in there for a growth audit. You can book time straight in my diary, and we can build it from there. And that is it. That is Sean Steele doing probably the shortest podcast I think I've ever done. So massive pat on the back to me, a story for you, hopefully something valuable, a great tool for you if you are thinking about your step up or your scale up or your step back, something that you can use as a free tool, self-diagnosis. And if you want my support, opt in for a growth audit. And if not, thanks for enjoying today's episode. Don't forget to hit subscribe on your podcast player, or hit the share button and let somebody else know about the podcast, or leave us a review. That is the best way by far to say thanks to me and to the team for the time we put in creating this for you. We'd be super grateful, of course. And otherwise, I will be back in your eyes and ears in 2 weeks' time. And as always, keep scaling.